Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Like I mentioned a week or two ago, I don't remember at this point, I love talking about waste, I love talking about recycling, so today we're going to be talking about landfills. How do landfills work? How do they choose where to put them? What happens when a landfill closes? And how much landfill space do we even have left? This is going to be specifically focusing on the US, but I'm just gonna let you know right now, it's shocking. If you would rather read along or you are hard of hearing and prefer reading along, it is linked down below, the script, if you would like to read along. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste and practical ways to be an activist. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I go to a thrift store, a secondhand store, or even like a big box store like Target, I am just overwhelmed at the amount of stuff we have created. Like, I'm just looking at one store and I'm like, there's like 7 Targets in Las Vegas, not to mention the amount of stores like Walmart, shopping malls, other secondhand stores. I'm just like, there's so much stuff on this planet. Why do we keep creating stuff? But really my mind goes to, what are we doing with all this stuff when it stops working or when it no longer serves us? Because I know a lot of people are not sending stuff to thrift stores like Goodwill. A lot of people are throwing away good items. Do we even have enough space to be disposing of all this stuff? And I'm like specifically thinking of big stuffs like desks and chairs and shelves. Like, what do we do with all that stuff when it's broken? And then I'm like, okay, sure, it's fine right now. We're sending this stuff to the landfill, but like, are we gonna run out of landfill space ever soon? My curiosity really began when I lived in Japan, because Japan is a much smaller country than the United States land-wise. Japan is approximately the size of like Maine to Florida, like the East Coast of the US. And in the US, it's so hard to picture that we're gonna run out of landfill space because our country is so big land-wise. Like, surely we have enough space to send all of our junk. But in Japan, because of their limited size, they had to get resourceful in how they're dealing with their waste. This means that their recycling systems are very, very good, very, very high rates of recycling, and they also use incineration for things municipal waste like garbage, and also a lot of their plastic is incinerated as well. Because as we talked about in the 7 types of plastic video, I'll leave linked up here, plastic recycling really is not a valuable system. And I have a really great video I made, oh my gosh, has it been 2 years? Maybe it was last spring I made this video, one of my favorite videos I've still ever made, and that is incineration versus recycling and how they incinerate waste in Japan. I take you live to a mini incinerator machine that we used at a beach cleanup. It was really, really cool. I'll leave it linked above and below as well. But basically, they have developed these methods of incineration that have scrubbers that ensure that the pollution is minimized if there's any pollution at all during this incineration process. And not only this, but the heat created from burning waste is used as a form of green energy. But what does this look like in the US? We all know our recycling system is broken. It is definitely preferable for a lot of people to just send stuff to the landfill. So let's dive in, and I know we're already like 3 minutes into the video, but I just want to tell you, like, I know this isn't the most sexy zero waste topic, but it is something I'm very interested in and something that's actually going to become a really big problem for us if we don't act soon. So I hope that you learn a lot from this video, and I hope that you stay tuned till the end to learn more about what we can do as consumers to help this system. So first off, what is a landfill and how do they decide where to put them? I don't think I really need to define a landfill. I'm pretty sure we all know it's a place that our trash goes and it's buried out of sight, out of mind, and it becomes these big mounds. Fun fact. It's not fun. It's actually really sad. Ohio is really flat. I'm from Ohio originally. There's a landfill in southern Ohio in like the Hamilton area that is just 500 feet shy of becoming Ohio's tallest point. So I definitely see some of these flat states having their highest point be a landfill, if not now, then soon. Anyway, how do they choose where to put a landfill? We need to understand that landfills follow strict guidelines. This means that they are not built in environmentally sensitive areas, so think of places like wetlands, rainforests, and other things like that. They are also designed to protect the environment from contaminants such as paint, medical waste, and so forth. They also have monitoring systems in place to check for contamination of groundwater and soil, as well as any gas that may be coming out of the landfill. Something else I did not know is that there are different types of landfills. The first one, and generally speaking, probably the most popular, is municipal solid waste landfills, and that is stuff like the trash cans we have at our homes. That's where it goes, to municipal solid waste. And then there's a subcategory of this, which is composting, because composting is municipal solid waste, but it is known as a bioreactor landfill, meaning that it has a place to break down properly, turn back into soil. But this is not very common. I don't know very many places in the US that compost. I think, some bigger and more eco cities like Austin, Texas, San Francisco. If your city in the US composts, definitely let me know down below. There's also an industrial waste landfill, and this is things from like construction, institutional waste, and things like that. And this is often a significant portion of waste across the entire country. So think of things like when an old building gets knocked down, that's where that waste goes. And then the last category is hazardous waste landfills. This is never solid waste. This is things like nuclear waste, which I talked more about in this video in the myths of green energy. So how does a landfill operate? After choosing a suitable location, it's time to dispose of the waste, but there are certain measures taken, again, to ensure that it is the most environmentally conscious as it can be. The first step is essentially to dig a big hole and then insert a composite liner. This is a requirement for all landfills. Best way I can put this is like, think of when you're digging a pool. Before you fill it with water, you have to put a liner in so that nothing seeps out. This liner sits on top of 2 feet of compacted clay, and it lines the bottoms and all of the sides. This is used to protect groundwater and the underlying soil from leachate releases. Leachate, the best way I can describe this, is any waste that would leach into groundwater and soil. This is a byproduct of what happens when it rains on top of a landfill. The water comes in contact with the buried waste and leaches or draws out chemicals and other things from that waste, turning it into leachate, which is then an environmental hazard. Therefore, landfills do have a leachate collection facility and removal system to ensure that it is disposed of properly. Now it's time to add the waste. So this includes dumping it in there and then compacting it down so that the landfill can maximize its space. It's then covered with several inches of soil, and it's kind of like trash lasagna. Or composting, if you're familiar with composting. You know, you put in a layer of food waste and then you put in a layer of like paper or brown leaves, and you just keep layering it. This ensures that everything can break down to the best of its ability. Granted, nothing in landfills ever truly break down because it's things like water bottles, phone cases, phones, electronics. That stuff really doesn't break down ever. Now the question we've all been waiting for: when does a landfill reach capacity? Eventually all landfills will reach capacity because, like, if you think about it, it's just gonna keep going, and then like be vertical, and they don't want that. It's got to stay like a compacted mound so that it doesn't fall apart over time. And once it reaches capacity, the landfill is officially closed. This includes covering the landfill and providing long-term care of the closed facilities. When will the US run out of landfill space? Way sooner than I thought. As of this year, as of 2020, we have approximately an average of 16 years left of landfill space in the US. This is something I never thought I would see in my lifetime, and it was really shocking to read that statistic. But of course this varies by region, but it's looking like approximately 5 to 10 years left in the Northeast and something more along the lines of 27-28 years in the West. I think this has a lot to do with the West has more space, as well as the West was developed last as a nation. You know, we started in the East and started those landfills sooner before we moved west. But what happens when our landfills do reach capacity? Because it's coming a lot sooner than we thought. At least than I thought. Each year, the US produces 292.4 million tons of municipal solid waste. Around the world, this looks like 2 billion pounds of solid municipal waste per year. This makes Americans #1 per capita in producing waste. What a statistic to be proud of, am I right? We produce 12% of the world's trash despite only accounting for 4% of the population. That is disgusting. Here's a quote from a 2015 analysis study that was conducted by Brian Staley. Quote, 7 states are looking at running out of landfill space in the next 5 to 10 years. 1 state will reach capacity in 5 to 10 years. 3 states have about 11 to 20 years to go, but 22 states will have available landfill space for decades to come. This means collectively, as a nation, we have about 60 years left before we actually run out of landfill space. What this is gonna look like is landfills in the East are gonna run out quite soon of their landfill space. They're gonna have to start shipping their waste somewhere, whether that be overseas, which would be terrible to burden someone else with our waste, which would not be the first time we've done that as the US, or they're gonna have to send it west. And that's just going to expedite how quickly the West landfills fill up. And then once the landfills in the West run out, what are we going to do? I don't think there's any plans in place. It's very much like we're reacting to climate change. Like, oh, that's a problem we'll deal with in the future. I'm going to be dead before that's a problem. Like, I don't want to leave this problem for someone else to deal with. This is going to be very bad if we don't have a plan in place. But why are landfills so full in the first place? From what I can tell, it's because it is the most accessible form of waste disposal in the United States. Like I already mentioned, composting is few and far between, and recycling isn't even that common. When I lived in West Texas, I lived in San Angelo, there was no recycling, like 0. I think there was 1 facility in the entire town, and you as a resident had to drive your waste there yourself. There was no curbside recycling. And even in Vegas, where recycling is highly encouraged, it's still not mandated. I have a lot of friends who live in apartment buildings in Las Vegas. They don't have access to recycling. And not to mention, we dispose of so many good items. I see this all the time, people putting this office chair. I found this office chair on the curb. Someone was throwing it away. It was bound for the landfill. And other things, like I get a lot of clothes secondhand. I get most of my clothes secondhand. I get pretty much all my household appliances and kitchenware secondhand, which is great. I'm glad that I have that option available. And this is also tricky too because thrift stores aren't equipped to deal with all of our waste because we are just consuming at an alarming rate, which means that stuff that we send to big chain thrift stores is often sent overseas as well, and you can learn more about that in this video. But pretty much it's just far too convenient to throw things away. There is no incentive to donate. There's no incentive to recycle. There's no incentive to compost. And there's no incentive to reuse either. Like if my shirt gets a hole in it, there's no incentive for me to fix it when I can go buy another shirt at Target for like $3 or whatever it costs to buy a brand new shirt these days. Goodwill, it's like $3 or $4. And our products aren't designed to last either. Think about iPhones and their, what do you call it? Planned obsolescence, I believe. And that is, after time, iPhone batteries start degrading, and eventually you can't get new updates on your old phone because Apple wants you to buy their latest model. It's the same thing with washing machines, with microwaves, with ovens, everything. Everything is not designed to last because companies don't make money that way. Just like with plastic recycling, like we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, it all comes down to the money. And it's really, really unfortunate that a few greedy people, not a few, a lot of greedy people are destroying this planet, either like intentionally or unintentionally. But by not making their products repairable, they are unintentionally harming the planet because we have to send all of this stuff to the landfill. But how do we stop our landfills from overflowing? Because I don't know about you, but that statistic really scares me. I already touched on it all, and basically what it boils down to is take advantage of recycling, repair, reuse, donate, sell, avoid the landfill at all costs. Start thinking of the landfill as a last resort. I know growing up, it was just so common to be like, oh, this has a hole, this is like a little broken, whatever, I just don't like this item anymore, into the trash it goes. Instead, think of the landfill as like your plan Z. Think about those things I already mentioned. Can it be recycled? Can it be repaired? Can it be reused? Can it be upcycled? Can it be donated? Can it be sold? Can it be composted? There are so many more options. Instead of a landfill, we just have to think of those options first. We also need to make those options more accessible, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But also start thinking about the end life of your product before you even buy it. Before going and buying a new water bottle or whatever item it may be, when you're looking at them on the shelf, when you're looking at them online, think about, what am I going to do with this item when it no longer serves me? Whether that be broken or I just don't like it anymore. So like with clothing, with shoes, anything you buy. So instead, you might want to choose a water bottle that's easily recyclable, or you might want to choose, I don't know, a phone or a phone case that can be composted, like my Pila case. Just a little shout out. You can shop Pila case with the link in my bio. But basically, instead of waiting until that item no longer serves you to think about, oh, what should I do with it? Think about that before you even buy it. Of course, opt for package free when possible. This is great like at the grocery store because, like we mentioned in the plastic recycling video a few weeks ago, thin plastics are hard to recycle, so opting for package free lettuce instead of like a bag of salad mix is a great way to avoid landfill waste. But also, you can opt for packaging that can be recycled. There are 3 big problems that remain though. Overconsumption is a huge issue worldwide, but especially in the US, as we already talked about with a statistic how we're the #1 capita of waste production. Number 2, recycling in this country is so flawed. And number 3, composting is like still a brand new idea to a lot of people. The good news is that composting is really easy to do if you don't have access to curbside composting in your city. And it really doesn't matter what type of home you live in. I've seen people composting in apartments, on farms. I live in the suburbs and I'm still able to have a little tiny backyard compost. And more good news, recycling, though not accessible everywhere, is still really widely accessible. So if you have access to curbside recycling, please take advantage of it, but also please watch these 2 videos right here, and that is wish cycling and why we are actually recycling incorrectly, as well as the importance of recycling and why we should be recycling correctly. And I have an entire playlist, more videos such as 100 things you can't put in your curbside recycling, 45 more things you can't put in your curbside recycling, 100 surprising things you can recycle through special programs like TerraCycle, and then a video outlining what is TerraCycle and how to use it. They will all be linked down below where you can learn more about recycling and recycling correctly. Ultimately, recycling is not our fault. It's not our responsibility. We shouldn't be responsible for, waste from products like Coca-Cola and so forth. But the more that we recycle correctly as consumers, the better this system can become. Our recycling rates are so low because a lot of the times we are recycling incorrectly, but also the recycling market just is bad. So we need to put pressure on our governments and corporations to fix our recycling system. It was a few months ago, Maine became the first US state to take the burden of recycling off of consumers. They made it the corporation's responsibility to pay for and take responsibility for recycling the waste that they create. We as consumers aren't creating the plastic waste. We are only consuming what we have access to consume. It shouldn't be our fault that our landfills are running out of space and that our oceans are full of plastic. Because what it ultimately boils down to is we need to fix our systems now instead of waiting until we're out of time. Instead of waiting 10 years for the landfills to run out of space, let's make a plan now. Let's try to give ourselves more time to fill up that landfill. If we can cut our waste in half, we'll then have 20 years until it's full. But even if we never slow down the rate at which we're sending stuff to the landfills, we do need systems in place, because what are we gonna do when we run out of space? Sure, we can send it to other countries, but they're gonna run out of space eventually. Eventually we will run out of space in the world to put our waste. What are we gonna do with it? Are we gonna send it to Mars? Is that why we're trying to colonize Mars? Are we just gonna blast it to space in Elon Musk's new rocket? I don't know what's gonna happen. But basically, we need to work together on fixing our recycling, fixing our composting, and really just stop over-consuming. Obviously, we need to consume what we need to consume, but think before you buy. Do I really need this item? Can I find it secondhand? Can I borrow it instead? I've talked about this so many times in videos of talking about overconsumption. I'll leave them linked down below. Really think before you buy something. Try not to emotionally shop. I also have a lot of more helpful videos linked down below on how to find your politicians, some helpful letter writing tips, and some letter writing examples so that you can write with a W now. So that we can all come together and write to our governments, write to our corporations, and demand that they fix these problems now before it's too late. But also, please don't feel like hope has run out. We can fix these systems. We just really all need to come together and fix them. This is something that, again, it's not the sexiest zero waste topic, but it's really important because this is becoming urgent. I didn't realize how urgent of a problem it was that we were running out of landfill space that soon. So if you found any helpful information in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with others, because this is really important, and the more of us that take action, the more action that can come of it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time, especially if you made it all the way to the end. If you found any value in this video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up, and again, really would appreciate if you shared this with others. There's not only so much helpful information in this video, but also a lot of helpful links I left in the description for you to learn more, because again, even though recycling is not a responsibility, the better that we do it as a community, as consumers, all of us, better that the system will become. And again, don't forget to take action by writing and calling your local government and the corporations that you would like to see making change. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And until next time, remember that your small actions have a big impact in the long run. Bye guys. If you would rather read along, okay. In this, I'm just gonna inform you, and something that's actually something I did not know, and that is oh my gosh, another long bloopers. Did I already say that? Boop boop. Each year, the US produces 292 million. Okay, yeah. That was conducted by Brian Staley. Oh, I said 2 big problems. There are 3 big problems that remain. There's a cat hair in my nose. They made it